Okay, Oscar fans, this is the best SmackDown among experts that we've got on the books. We've got Mike Hogan of Vanity Fair. We've got Chris Rosen of EW.com. And look, Oscars are days away. We agree on a lot of categories, but let's go right for the one where we disagree. Mike, Chris and I are saying Denzel for Best Actor, but you have the nerve to disagree.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to tell you my reasoning, which is not very high order of thought. But basically, they're both jerks in the movies that they play. But like Casey's character, you feel bad for him and you want to give him a hug. And even though you understand structurally why he is the way he is, he really is such a jerk, and he's mean to Viola Davis. So at some gut level, I feel like it's a less sympathetic character than Casey plays in Manchester. I think that Manchester by the Sea is a better film, even though Fences is obviously an amazing script, and I actually like the film. I think it's good. But I don't know, man. It's tough. I think this one feels like a toss-up to me, but I'm sticking with Casey.
Chris, straighten him out. Denzel has won nothing this year but SAG. He's lost everything else, right? So and I'm with you on Denzel. What's your best argument for Denzel?
My best argument is that he won SAG. I mean, Casey Affleck won a bunch of awards that don't matter if you think of it, right? He won the Golden Globe. It doesn't matter because no one in the Globes votes for the Oscars. He won a BAFTA, but he wasn't up against Denzel, who wasn't nominated there. And we've seen that BAFTA actually doesn't even matter in that regard because Matthew McConaughey wasn't nominated for Dallas Buyers Club, and he ended up winning anyway, at the Oscars. So I feel like the SAG award was the canary in the coal mine for Denzel. And I think that Denzel, honestly, for most of the year, I was kind of expecting him to gain enough momentum to win over Casey Affleck because Casey Affleck's performance is really quiet. And while it's very good, obviously all of his, personal issues perhaps off screen maybe would have a factor. I also just think that people really like Denzel Washington and want to be in the Denzel Washington business. And he's played unlikable characters before and won an Oscar for Training Day. I think he's actually a giant jerk in Fences. Like, I don't like that movie. I definitely don't like him in it as a character. I think it's a really good performance. But yeah, I just think he's going to run away with it. I really think most people, when they get their ballots, are going to be like, who do I want to be friends with in real life and who do I want to work with in the future? And they're going to say Denzel Washington over Casey Affleck. So that's where I have him down.
Are we
Plus,
getting
he didn't have a big, gross, bushy beard the whole time, too. That was also helpful.
Oh, yeah. And the man bun.
Yeah.
Well, one more thing to make you nervous here, Mike, and that is that Denzel is campaigning aggressively and Casey is not because of these issues we're talking about. He doesn't want to talk to the press. So Denzel sees an opportunity there. Here on the ground in LA, he's really pushing it. So it is close.
I also think that Denzel's SAG speech cannot be discounted, guys, because I feel like in his speech he kind of played a little bit of like a puttering older actor, but also like kind of had a really pointed comment where he called out Casey as being like a young guy. And I think that kind of like really delegitimized him as a candidate, perhaps, even though Casey Affleck's been acting for, 20 years. The way Denzel kind of just like brushed him aside as like a newcomer, I think that's going to resonate if people actually pay attention to that as a voter, because they're going to be like, yeah, why do we want to give this young actor an award? And young actors historically don't really do well in Best Actor. It usually kind of goes to, young actresses win, older actors win Best Actor. So I think if Denzel was able to pretend even that Casey Affleck is like a younger actor, that would end up helping his candidacy.
Wait a minute. Just because Denzel made one remark offhandedly that he's young, he's suddenly young. The guy's like 45 years old.
That doesn't matter. It's perception. It's not reality.
But,
all right,
Mike, your argument for the empathy factor with Casey, I think, is really the strongest argument to make, and why he's been winning everything and may very well win the Oscar. And that is that he is the Oscar voter. He's a straight white guy brooding about the troubles of his life, feels like a loser because he's just been dumped on the whole time. And I think the power of that performance, like the whole power of Moonlight, is empathy, and you're sympathetic and you feel for Casey in a way you don't for Denzel. So if they're voting on emotion, which they often do, then you're right.
Well, I mean, look, I'm totally in the tank for Manchester by the Sea. To me, it's the best movie that I saw this year, and I'm actually sad that it's becoming a cliche to kind of be like, oh, it's just like a white guy who's sad. I'm like, dude, I don't want to spoil the movie, but anyone who's seen the movie knows that something truly horrible happens to this guy, and it's all about him trying to pick up the pieces. And yes, it's a lot of white people, but anyway, but you're right. I mean, all this is true. He's not a movie star the way Denzel is. Denzel is obviously a retail campaigner in a way that I think Denzel is a very difficult guy, and I think people who know him may have conflicted opinions about him, but I think anyone who's 1 degree away from him, 2 degrees away from him, which is just about everybody in the world, yeah, we all like worship Denzel. He's amazing. And as Krista Smith, my colleague, keeps saying, he's 60 years old. He's on a horse in Magnificent Seven. He's he's bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars every year for Hollywood. He's Hollywood's guy. So I get all that. I just think when I think about what's on the screen, they're both great performances. But Casey's the one where I'm just like dissolve in emotion each time. And there's a lot of humor in there. It's a really incredible performance. But I don't know. Denzel will probably win. I think at this point I got to stick with Casey.
The thing is, too, I mean, like, not to bog down on Best Actor, but I think, to Mike's credit here, I agree with everything he said about Manchester by the Sea and Casey Affleck's performance. And I think we're getting to it down the line here where what else is Manchester by the Sea going to win? And I think that was a very strong movie this year that people liked. And if it's not going to win Casey Affleck Best Actor, and maybe it doesn't win Best Screenplay, then it walks away with nothing. So maybe they do end up giving it to Casey just because, like, that will be the one award for the entire movie. Whereas, Fences, we already have Viola Davis winning, so that movie is getting honored as well, if we're going to spread the wealth a little.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch over to Best Actress, where everybody's got Emma Stone. But I'm very, very worried about Isabelle Huppert. She's the name I hear very frequently from the Oscar voters themselves. She has the cachet of snobism, and that is often a dominant trend at the Oscars. Do either of you guys think there's a chance that she could actually win?
Yes, I do, because I keep hearing the same thing you're hearing. And, yesterday we did a live stream with Rebecca Keegan and Krista, who I mentioned earlier, and Julie Miller. And I was like, so we all agree Emma Stone is just a lock, right? And Rebecca, who's been at the Dolby Theater the last 3 days, talks to a lot of, voters, as do you, Tom. She was like, Isabelle Huppert, can't count her out. Frances, Meryl Streep, all this stuff. 2 films this year, which can sometimes help. So you're getting kind of like even if you didn't love Elle, you might love the other one. So I still think Emma will win, but I do think also if we're assessing performances, Emma Stone does a very complicated thing really well, which is that she carries a musical and, in the old kind of Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers thing, does it backwards and in heels. And so you do want to celebrate that, but it's not, there's not like the intensity. It doesn't have that dramatic intensity that Isabelle Huppert has, which could be maybe an issue for Emma if this La La Land backlash that we keep hearing about is real. But I'd love to know from you, Tom, if you think it's real or not. I think Chris thinks it's not real. It's just press.
A couple of disgruntled macho bloggers are doing that, but right, Chris, it's going to sweep. The question is, how big is sweep? Look, Best Picture usually wins an acting award, right? But it didn't the last 2 years. Birdman didn't, and Spotlight didn't. So, what do you think? Size it up, Emma versus Isabelle.
I think Emma's going to win, but I think it's very close. And if Isabelle Huppert won, I would not be totally shocked, like Mike was saying. I think the reason I think Emma Stone's going to win is because La La Land is a juggernaut, and I think it's going to win at least 10 awards and Best Picture, and kind of they're going to take Emma Stone along with it. And she hasn't even shown any kind of fatigue throughout the award season. She's literally won at every event, and kind of been very gracious winning. I think her speeches have been spot on. She hasn't stepped in any potholes. And while I'm sure people would really love to reward Isabelle Huppert, I question whether they're even going to sit down and watch Elle, for starters. And then I don't know necessarily if she has enough. She's Frances Meryl Streep, sure, but does she have enough name recognition to people just put her down because they really like Isabelle Huppert? I mean, I guess maybe, but I think Emma Stone's going to win. And we've seen time and again, certainly in the last few years, the last 20 years, when there's a Best Actress race that comes down to a quote-unquote younger newcomer and an older actress, the younger person wins. Almost routinely, right? Yeah. You could go all the way back to Marissa Tomei versus Lauren Bacall. You could go to Jennifer Lawrence versus Emmanuel Riva. And I think you're going to see that again with Emma Stone and Isabelle Huppert.
Yeah, but I think that if there was a few more weeks, if there were a few more weeks in that Jennifer Lawrence versus Emmanuel Riva thing, we were giving you a lot of grief that year, of course, because you were on the Riva train. But it was there was so much momentum for her near the end. I think if there was another week or two in the Oscar race, she actually could have done it. But look, that said, my argument for Emma is this, and that is that look, if Jean Dujardin can win Best Actor of the Year, it's because he's riding the coattail effects of the artist's sweep for Best Picture. She is the Jean Dujardin. You're right, Mike. The role doesn't have the gravitas and the pretension that they normally want, but I think she's got the other factors going for her. That said, I'm really worried about it.
I think this Huppert stuff is probably people being like, I don't go to Starbucks, I go to Blue Bottle. You know, I mean, it's just like, it's a nice thing to say to make you sound sophisticated, but like Emma's going to win. I do believe that Emma will win this, won everything else. And La La Land has enough momentum where it's got that kind of like, it's like voting when you don't know any of the, assemblymen. You're just like, all right, down the party line.
Well, last year we saw an upset for Best Supporting Actor by Mark Rylance, who won BAFTA, and practically nothing else except a couple of the there. But he won, I think, because of the snob factor. He's a British stage star, multiple Tony winner, and all that. And I think we didn't see a lot of love for Bridge of Spies, so you have to attribute it to something. He certainly didn't campaign. He was never here. I don't think he spoke to the press more than once or twice. But I think it was, if the snob factor was what pushed him over last year, then I think that's something we need to worry about this year. But that said,
it is interesting. It's like the Academy sometimes says it's our job to introduce America to this great thespian from abroad, and so there could be that with Isabel. But on the other hand, I think Emma has just enough momentum in her own rank, and also as they add new younger members, I just wonder if the new younger members that they've been adding feel that way, or if they are more kind of like, hey, let's celebrate Emma for doing such an awesome job in this big movie.
Yeah. All right. So Chris, Mark Rylance won last year. He won BAFTA. That should have tipped us off, but we were idiots. This year, look who won BAFTA. Dev Patel, not Mahershala Ali. Moonlight won nothing at BAFTA. Should we be looking for a Dev Patel upset?
I don't think so. I still have Mahershala Ali winning, but I think if anybody was going to win, it's Dev Patel. And I think you can make and I'm sure Mike will, because I think Mike's been on the Dev Patel train. I feel like you can make a very convincing argument that Dev is going to win Best Supporting Actor. And I think you could argue that it is, again, spreading the wealth. Lion was a very successful film with the Academy. I think it has 6 nominations, right, as much as Manchester. And it really has no spot where it's going to necessarily win, because we're all kind of like centering Best Adapted Screenplay when Barry Jenkins in Moonlight, and that's where you're going to reward Moonlight. Mahershala Ali, absolutely fantastic in Moonlight. I think he could, it's definitely, in my opinion, the best performance in the film. Problems are he's not in the rest of the film. He's in it for 20 minutes, right? So you kind of already don't have that factor. And Dev, while maybe not as egregious category fraud as we've seen in the past, is still in that movie for like an hour, and he plays the lead character. So I think it's a great performance. I think he's really well liked. I think all of those reasons are why you could pick him to win, but Dev Patel is not on the cover of Hollywood Reporter this week. It's Mahershala Ali, or he was last week. I just feel like he's been everywhere, Mahershala. I think he will end up winning, but it's much closer maybe than we expect.
Yeah, I mean, I know I still have Mahershala on Gold Derby, but I might change it. I don't know, because I do worry that A24 doesn't have the kind of. I mean, neither A24 nor Weinstein has any money, but Weinstein has his wily Weinstein ways, and we've all been to parties now with Dev and Sonny, the little tiny little boy from the movie who plays him in a as a kid, and that movie, even though it really bogs down in the second act, like by the third act you're just weeping, crying your face off, which I always think is a good signifier that something's going to do well at the Oscars. Dev, from being the kind of nerdy guy in a bunch of things early on, is suddenly like this total sex god in this movie. And for those, I'm not saying there are any reactionary old racists in the Academy, but if there were any who didn't like the idea of giving an Oscar to a Muslim, they've got a cover to give it to a person of color in Dev, who's like a very friendly person. I'm sorry I just said that, but I actually think that's something that's a real issue.
In fact, hey, look, if campaigning matters, and you're talking about the Harvey factor here, Yeah, and the parties. All of us get these 22 invites a day to Dev Patel, meet and greets and campaign events. They have really, really pushed him. And if campaigning matters, this year we could see it play a factor with Denzel Washington. Emma Stone, by far, has been the most aggressive campaigner for lead actress. That's really in her favor. And Chris, what do you think about the campaign factor for Dev?
I mean,
because he's really been all over the place. I
mean, he's been all over the place. I think a couple of factors. Again, after we discuss this, by the end of this, I might end up switching to Dev. But I think, I think the campaigning thing is big. I think, like Mike was saying, like Moonlight, I think maybe we would all agree Moonlight is a better film than Lion. But I think Lion works better as an emotional mainstream kind of hit, and that is kind of right in the Oscars' voters' wheelhouse. Similarly, like Hidden Figures. I think they're very kind of comparable films, and they kind of play the same way. They also play better at home than Moonlight does, because Moonlight is slower and more contemplative. And I think if you're popping a screener in, even though you got to sit through the first hour of Lion to get to Dev, you're still sitting through Sonny Poir, who's really cute. People love him, right? He's a nice kid. Yeah. Like Moonlight, I think is it's a more challenging view for an Oscar voter. So I think those factors are in there, and I think Dev could just sneak in and win. The other problem is, as much as I think Mahershala Ali is incredible in Moonlight, he doesn't, and he has a bunch of really knockout scenes. They're very quiet scenes. He doesn't have like a big emotional catharsis moment like Dev does. I think more where it's like you're gonna just bring him to tears. Like I just think those are big factors for Dev. I wouldn't put too much stock in the BAFTA, but I would say the thing that we maybe have been overrating is that while critics groups were all over Mahershala all year, it has been very fractured since. And, if you're an Oscar voter, to contradict what I said earlier, but obviously the Golden Globes don't matter, but there, he didn't win, right? Like Aaron Taylor Johnson did. And then, at the SAG Awards, he won. That was great. But then BAFTA, you got Dev up there. It's kind of, he hasn't really had the chance to coalesce his campaign, and we are pointing to that SAG speech, which is really wonderful. But you look at Emma Stone; she's made how many speeches that people have seen, like 5, 6, and it's like every time it's like, oh, she's doing a great job. Same with like Viola Davis, and I'm not sure Mahershala has had that moment. He's been kind of stop and start because of how fractured that race has been. So I think that one is a clear, could be a Dev Patel win.
We all agree that Lala is going to win 10 total, which would be one shy of the record. The only difference between you guys in terms of the 10 is that in your case, Mike, you're going for La La Land for sound editing, and Chris is going for Hacksaw. And we should point out that the trend in that category is either, and this is where it gets interesting, and this is where you listeners and viewers have to pay attention, because this is where you win or lose your Oscar prediction contest. And that is factors like the sound awards often go to the same film about half the time. Like last year, Mad Max won them both. But when they split, the sound mixing award goes to the film that has music in it, like Whiplash last year, or 2 years ago, I guess. And then the loudest movie, often a war movie, wins sound editing. So I think that's your argument, right, Chris? For
sound editing is also the creation of sound effects, right? Like kind of to maybe boil it down to layman terms, and then the sound mixing is like what it sounds like. So I know people have complained about the La La Land mix and maybe the opening number, the vocals aren't up, and blah blah blah. Who gives a crap? That movie's great. The music is great. People are gonna just be like, I love the way that sounds. I love the tap dancing. I'm in. I'm voting for it. And then Hacksaw Ridge with the banging and the guns and all the et cetera explosions. They're going to be like, oh, that's great. And again, Hacksaw Ridge, a Best Picture nominee, a strong kind of contender for other awards. Where else is that going to win? Maybe you could argue it wins Best Editing. I don't think so. So I think you give it sound editing, and there you go.
I can't argue with that. I'm glad somebody finally explained it to me. I'm going to go change my picks.
I'll write up a post too. We'll get it in Google search. Hit the SEO on.
Thanks, Chris. Great. Good work.
You can tweet it.
Okay, so the other difference that you guys have is over screenplay.
I will fight this one. I'm fighting screenplay now.
Okay.
Let's do that. That's a good fight.
All right, so Mike says Manchester over Lala, and Chris has the audacity to go for the musical and script. The last time a musical won the script award at the Oscars was Gigi. Go, Mike. Explain.
All right, well, Yeah, I mean, you got even as far as I know, even Damien Chazelle's own team is telling him, "Hey, man, you can't win every single category. Like it's all right." And he's 32 years old. He wrote this thing, before he even made Whiplash. It's wonderful in many ways, but I think there's ways to award La La Land without focusing on the screenplay exactly. Meanwhile, Kenny Lonergan is obviously a veteran, been nominated twice before. Big playwright in New York before he became a big screenwriter. Just like one of these kind of, he's like at basically living legend status now. And so I think people are, I interviewed Alison Schroeder yesterday, and she was bragging that she can make Kenny Lonergan giggle, which I thought was pretty funny. But like that to her is like the big fun thing of being on award circuit, is that she like actually now knows Ken Lonergan. So I think, between that and the fact that that script is just, to me, absolutely incredible and technically masterful. And it's a film that gets better the more you watch it because of all that and the maturity of the script. I think that he'll win and it'll be, and I think Damien will be fine. There's also some murkiness around whether Damien's ex-wife, had a hand in writing the script. I don't know if that filtered out to voters or not, but that may also be, a small factor in the whole thing.
Mr. Rosen, defend your
or you can just switch too. It's fine.
No, I'm not going to switch to this one. I'll tell you. I still think Kenny Lonergan is looked at as an outsider. And you mentioned like a New York theater icon. I think that's part of maybe the problem why he won't win. I think, people really like La La Land, and we cannot discount that enough. And I think that that's going to end up being the factor, is that, wow, I love this movie. It's my favorite movie of the year. Why wouldn't I vote for it for screenplay? I would argue that the La La Land script is actually quite good. There's a lot of funny lines. I think that is helped by the music and by the chemistry between Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone. But I think it's a very well done script. I think it's really inventive and creative, and kind of like, I like the way it goes back and forth in time. It reminds me of something that like Paul Thomas Anderson or Quentin Tarantino would have written in the 90s, and I think that will we kind of always discounted those Tarantino scripts, and then he wins a bunch of Oscars. So I think looking at it like that to me is why Damien is going to win for best screenplay over Kenneth Lonergan. I would not be surprised if Manchester won, like I was saying before. Where else is it going to win if we think Casey's going to lose? And again, I think they're going to want to reward that movie, which is a really good movie and had a lot of support in the Oscars. But I think when push comes to shove, people are going to be like, which movie did I like better? And they're going to pick La La Land. And that's just it.
Okay. If you want to win your Oscar prediction pool, of course, you really got to tackle the hardest thing, which are those goddamn shorts, right? Right before we signed on here, Mike was saying, "Oh, Gold Derby's predictions on shorts are all screwed up." Please, I want to win. I want to beat you, Mike. So tell me why they're wrong so I can fix them and beat you.
Okay, first of all,
yeah, Mike, tell us about the shorts.
Chris just told me that when we do it on Gold Derby, on the Little Gold Men, he's like, I can't fast forward your shorts conversations fast enough.
I'm like, how come the podcast only fast forward 10 seconds at a time? I'm like, just get through this.
Yeah. Are they still talking about Enemies Interieur? That Enemies Interieur is just a terrible movie. And it reminds me of Jon Stewart's directorial debut, and that's not a compliment.
Oh, boy, Rosewater.
Yeah.
Force him out.
30 minutes of just a boring conversation between an immigration guy in France and an Algerian man, and it should not win. So I think that Sing should win. It's not as dark as like Shirley Jackson's The Lottery, but it's got a little twist of that. It's about a choir that's world famous in, I think, Bucharest, and the principle is like, everyone can join our world famous choir. That's one of my key principles. And then this little girl joins the school and finds out that she's being asked by the choir director to just mouth the words in the song instead of actually singing. And clearly the whole thing's like some kind of metaphor for authoritarianism and all that stuff. But it's very well done. And so that would be my pick for live action. For documentary, it is a little bit all over the place, but I thought if people actually watch them, there's 3 of them about the refugee crisis. But one called Watani, My Homeland, is about this absolutely beautiful family leaving Syria, moving to their father is a fighter, and he gets killed, and so then they move to Germany, and are actually embraced in Germany, but they're just like, it's so moving. You just want to give all of them a giant hug. I want Trump to watch the movie because I think he would literally like invite all Syrian refugees to the United States for seeing it, to be like, these people are so fabulous. So anyway, that's my pick. A lot of people think it's going to be White Helmets, which is also like an incredibly intense film about Syria. And then the animated one, I think Gold Derby's right on that one because it's probably going to be the Pixar one, Piper. Although there's another one called Pearl that's like a Google VR thing. It's just 6 minutes long. And that is very cool. And it's just about it all takes place in a car. And at the beginning of it, it's this young dad with his young daughter in the back. And over the course of 6 minutes, you watch her grow up. You see them like kind of grow apart. And then they kind of come back and are friends again. I didn't watch it in 360, but even just, it's actually moving. It's like in 6 minutes, you're like, wow, I'm moved. Can you tell a theme here? I just look for the thing that makes you emotional. To me, is always the thing that's gonna actually get the Oscar if people actually bother watching stuff. Is my
that right there is why I think no one bothers watching these. I'm just gonna go on the record and say that. I don't think anybody has seen these movies. I think they vote for the ones they've heard of. So yes, Piper's gonna win for animated, and then either Watani or White Helmets will win for documentary short because they have big campaigns around them. White Helmets is a Netflix boost, and I feel like people have been really paying attention to that one, especially with regard to the travel ban and like people not coming in. So
and Clooney's like adapting White Helmets, isn't he? So
right. I feel like that. To me, I have White Helmets winning because I think people have heard of that, and I have the Pixar one winning, and then I have whatever Tom and Gold Derby said for winning, the other one.
Well, that's the worst one movie. So, but it might win. I literally think people look at Gold Derby and they're like, "Oh, okay, this is the movie."
Yeah, we got one of the Oscar consultants who you know very well told me the other day that she went into a group of all the Oscar voters the other night and said, what website do you go to? Which one are you paying attention to? And you know how old people talk, they went, that Gold Derby. She said she heard it all over the room, and she said it really scares her because in a couple of cases, her clients are not our picks. Let's put it that way.
Well, yeah. So maybe next year, like 5 people at Gold Derby can actually watch the shorts at the beginning of the whole process, since they're going to choose the winner anyway.
Well, we've been
I volunteer as tribute.
Okay. We have come across a rule, which I don't think applies this year. It does in a way, but that the animal usually wins. Remember the one with the bear won last year? The animated short thing? And we didn't see it coming, and our managing editor said, look, the one with the animal always wins. You guys are idiots. And of course, he was turned out to be right. So we are trying to kind of find out some rules here that apply. But I'm going with Joe's Violin for documentary short because it's the Holocaust thing. And it, unlike the Holocaust one last year with that Klaus Landsman, whatever it was, where he didn't win, that was so boring. It was just an old man sitting in a chair for like 5 hours. Wow, how that thing qualified as a short, I have no idea. And then, but this one is different. This one is an old man sitting in a chair, but but he gets out. I have seen this one. There is a story to be told. There's music. There's heart.
Well, and Joe's Violin, I've actually heard about that one, and they've been doing a lot of really good press. And I think at the Oscars luncheon, if I remember correctly, they had a little bit of a viral moment between the violinist and Denzel Washington that I saw getting traction on social media. So I feel like that movie is one that people, again, have heard of. So it's like, that maybe I'll win. Oscar voter coming home from the Oscars luncheon. You know what? I like that kid playing the violin. Let's vote for that.
Well, I'll tell you what. Actually, Joe's Violin is wonderful, and also it is incredibly moving, and it's short, and it is Condé Nast. My good pal Sarah Lash at Condé Nast acquired it, and so she's awesome. So I would be thrilled if that one won for all those reasons. I do think it could. Obviously, the Holocaust thing, is a leg up, but it's also really good and moving and uplifting. It's one of the few. Watani and that one and Joe's Violin are the two that actually have some uplift. Some of the others are just.
The one place where we could see politics intrude at the Oscars on the actual vote results might be foreign film, right? Where early on at Gold Derby, Tony Erdmann was way ahead. When you talk to people who are more in the field than I am, like Pete Hammond and Ann Thompson, they say, look, the movie they really love the most is Man Called Uwe. but we're all kind of pushing toward the salesman.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, Chris, you explain. Why are you going for the salesman?
Well, I have the salesman down again because of the real world things where Asghar Farhadi, who's the director, is not coming because of Trump's travel ban, and he kind of made a really powerful statement about that and why he wasn't going to attend. And I think, he's obviously an acclaimed filmmaker anyway. That plus the real world resonance of, his kind of protest not coming, I think would push that over Tony Erdmann, which is an awkward comedy, and Man from Ube. But I would say I'm not surprised to hear that like most people have really responded to Man from Ube, because of the foreign language nominees, I'm 99% sure that is the only one that has an additional nomination. It has Best Makeup nomination. And usually when a foreign language film has another nomination, that means that it will probably win. So I think if The Salesman doesn't win for the political reasons, while everyone is then going to assume that Tony Erdmann wins, actually Man from Ube would win just because like people liked it, and it has more Academy support than just the one siloed nomination.
But Mike, they're not watching these. They don't have to watch foreign film anymore, right?
Is that right? They can just.
In the old days, they had to go to screenings. They had to be signing in the front desk. Now it's just a popular vote.
Yeah. And I think the fact that Tony Erdmann got adapted into, or got optioned for a movie with Jack Nicholson, obviously gives it, a big leg up, because people are like, well, if Jack likes it, it's got to be good. He's coming out of retirement, basically. But The Salesman now does have this great political narrative, and it has the virtue of being extremely good, and it's about actors. The two people who are, the two leads are playing Death of a Salesman. The Salesman refers to Death of a Salesman, and he plays Willie Loman and she plays the wife. So I think that, I don't know. Yeah, I'm betting on Salesman, but this one does feel a little up in the air. But I like your theory, Chris, about the makeup nomination.
Yeah.
I think I feel like yeah.
You got three films that have a reason to win, which I think is good. It's interesting.
All right, here's a real daredevil prediction I want you to make about the Oscar ceremony. The last time we saw we know it's going to be a political circus. They're just going to be Trump bashing all night, and that'll make it fun to watch, of course. But the last time that the political bashing went right into the crazy zone, and in a delightful way, at least as I thought, was when Michael Moore, when he won for Bowling for Columbine, was at the podium screaming, "Shame on you, Mr. Bush! Shame on you!" They cut him off from the truck, remember? They had the nerve to do that. If there will be moments like that on Sunday, you first, Chris, will the Oscars cut that person off?
No way. That's the only thing that's going to make the show relevant for people watching it. I kind of feel like this year, I'm not confident that a lot of people care about the Oscars tune in this year. The movies are good, but there's not a Titanic. Jimmy Kimmel is great, but he's not like Ellen DeGeneres. So I think, kind of like losing steam there. People are going to tune in to see that Meryl Streep moment. I'll play devil's advocate, though, for both of you. I actually think while we all expect this to be a very political show, it's necessarily not going to be. If the winners who we expect to win, you're not going to get that Meryl Streep moment. Emma Stone is not going to go up there and say, F Trump, the White House sucks. Viola Davis has not done that so far in her speeches. She's kind of been more talking about representation in the industry and kind of, in the world, which is maybe a political statement now, surprisingly, because of the world we live in. Not necessarily a direct attack on Trump. Denzel Washington has never really been super political, and I don't think he would say anything. Same with Casey Affleck. He's kind of not. And then you're left with Mahershala, who, again, didn't really make a political statement with his SAG speech, but did mention that he was Muslim, which in this current climate does feel extremely political. But, you think about the people who made big statements this year at award shows. It was Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Well, she's not going to win. She's a TV star. It was Meryl Streep, who won, at the Golden Globes or a Lifetime Achievement Award or whatever they called it. Cecil B. DeMille Award. She's not going to make a speech. David Harbour from Stranger Things. He's not going to make a speech. So I would not be surprised if it's not as outrageously political as we think. I think Jimmy Kimmel will get his digs in, but I think overall we're kind of going to be disappointed with the level of outrage from the podium.
Mike, what do you think?
Yeah,
we can usually.
I certainly don't.
One of those tech people, right, to go crazy, or one of those other categories like. What if Lin-Manuel Miranda wins song? Right, he might pop off, or no?
Right, but he's not. The La La Land guys are going to win. No. They're going to be like, "We love La La Land. It's great. Dance off the stage."
Right. Don't ever give up on your dreams.
Here's to the ones who dream. Thanks, Mom.
Yeah. Rebecca Keegan put this pretty well yesterday. She said, because she's been at the rehearsals, and she said, look, as long as your speech is 45 seconds and you're not looking down at cue cards, they don't care what you say, you know. But if they do cut anybody off, it'll be for time, because they're really running very, very long right now, and they're desperately trying to. Yeah, they're desperately trying to get this thing down to being done like shortly after midnight. So
it's gonna be a treat for us watchers then. You know, if they're already running.
Oh long. Yeah. Just what you want, right? Yeah. So, but I think Chris is right. I think that it will be probably. I think it'll be less like the SAGs, but clearly people are going to be looking for an opportunity to say something. But I also think, you know, Hollywood at some level, not each person, but some level, may be a little anxious about popping off on this stage. You know, the SAGs is one thing, that's like an intramural situation, but like there's a lot of Trump voters watching, and for every person who's like, we need to bring, you know, the fight to them, there's going to be people who are like, hey, these people buy tickets, you know. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see.
And the other thing too, for both of you, I feel like all of those are I mean, you know, and you never know, because I haven't checked the news in 35 minutes, so Trump might have, you know, done something crazy that we're going to have to all react to when we get off of this. But the Golden Globes and the SAG Awards both happened immediately after big events, right? Like the inauguration, and then was coming, I think, that week, right? Because the Golden Globes are first, so the inauguration was the next Friday, and then the SAG Awards happened right as the travel ban was announced and nationwide protests were exploding all over the country. It was kind of hard to avoid making a political commentary in those cases. But I think with the Oscars now, it's like, okay, you know, obviously this week we had the rollback of the transgender bathroom student rights and stuff from schools. That could obviously come into play, I think, pretty heavily. But, you know, that was still earlier in the week. You know, people move so fast in the news cycle. By the Friday rolls around, maybe it'll be like, oh, Trump hasn't said or tweeted anything in a few days, and like the outrage is not as high as it was. So I can see it being maybe not as, you know, kind of on the front of everybody's mind.
I think the trans bathroom thing will definitely come up, but I think you're right. That's not like a flaming hot issue the way that the travel ban was, you know, at SAGs.
Yeah. Okay, anybody have a final thought before we sign off here?
Just pick La La Land.
How's Jimmy going to do it? How's Jimmy going to do as host?
I actually think he's going to do really well. I was watching him on Ellen DeGeneres today, and I'm like, man, that guy's really funny. He totally gets it. He's super self-deprecating. I cannot wait to see how he rags on Matt Damon. I'm sure Ben Affleck will show up and do something funny. I'm like, way in on all of this. I think he's going to be a perfect host for this year. And to his credit, you know, he's kind of been he's been vocally against Trump on his show. He's not shied away from it like Jimmy Fallon did, and then trying to like kind of backdoor into doing Trump attacks. So I think Kimmel is actually maybe the ideal host for this year and for this event, and people like him. I could see him being the best host since Ellen by far.
Yeah, he's almost got a little bit of a Bob Hope thing in a weird way. I mean, for a guy who started out on the Man Show, it's interesting how he's like really become an adult in the room for Hollywood. So I think, you know, I'm looking forward to it. I always like him.
He does that thing that Bill Simmons kind of does too, where it's like he has become an ultimate insider, and Howard Stern used to do this as well. Become an ultimate insider, but still maintains and presents like he's an outsider. And I think that goes a long way to both the crowd in the room who are insiders and like are like very famous, and then idiots like us watching at home, or me, because Mike, you're going to be like, you know, at the Vanity Fair live stream and stuff. But like for me watching at home, I'm going to be like, oh look, Jimmy Kimmel's just like me. He loves, you know, he likes drinking his Budweiser and making fun of Matt Damon.
Right.
Okay, on that note, we will sign off. Everybody at home watching this, or at work, wherever you are, make your predictions. You can beat us. We're three idiots. We really are. You guys know who's really going to win. I hope we haven't dissuaded you to make some stupid choice and lose. But if you're that stupid to believe us, you deserve to lose. Anyway, talk about self-deprecating. That didn't work. But anyway, good luck, everybody. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you.